Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
Good evening and welcome into another edition of Tider Insider Television, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and we're always pumped up to do this show, Rodney, but we're just a little more pumped up than usual because football is close. On Thursday, the school will celebrate this past season's national championship with a parade that is scheduled to begin at 9 a.m., and they're also going to rename one of the streets after Nick Saban, I think. Then the head coach and the team will get back to work for the 2021 season. Team reporting on Thursday. It's been 204 days since Alabama football took the field in their national championship win over Ohio State. But the Crimson Tide almost back, as they report on Thursday, as I said, and had their first full fall camp practice on Friday. But they will be doing so with a much different team than the one that went on the field against Ohio State last season. The Crimson Tide had a total of 10 players selected in the NFL draft, 6 in the first round, which means we will see some new faces in the 2021 season. But we won't only see new faces on the field. The Crimson Tide also has some new faces on the sideline as well. Here's Coach Saban talking about the new look Alabama and how the Tide will fare in 2021. This is from SEC Football Media Days.
We're going to be a work in progress as we focus on improvement, and that's going to be critical to our success. We have a lot of difficult games early, on the road, new coaches, new quarterback, 8 new guys on offense. We do have some 8 or 9 starters back on defense.
All right, Ronnie gets underway on Friday, and some good news that last year all the practices were closed to the media due to COVID. There will be some practice viewings this year, limited practice viewings, but nonetheless, we'll get a chance to get out there and see these guys with our own eyeballs. Let's talk about some key position battles to watch for. As Bryce Young tries to establish himself as the starting quarterback, Paul Tyson and true freshman Jaylen Milroe will be competing for that very, very important number 2 quarterback position.
Yeah, I think obviously Paul Tyson's worked really hard, Gary, and you have to give him credit for the progress he's made over the last 2 years. He certainly looked much more confident in this A-Day game than the one we saw him his first year. And so right now, with his experience, you certainly would expect him to go into the season number 2. But again, fall camp, August camp will certainly decide a lot of that. Jaylen Milroe is a fabulous athlete. I mean, there's been some good athletes here. Jalen Hurts was obviously outstanding. Walter Lewis back in the day was tremendous. But
Blake Sims
was certainly fit that bill. But when you look at Jaylen Milroe, Gary, he might be the best athlete that's ever played quarterback here at Alabama.
All right, we know that Evan Neal is going to move over to left tackle. He's an All-American candidate. But that opens up his old right tackle spot. A lot of guys competing there. Kendall Randolph's got a lot of experience. Damian George has been here a year. You've got the true freshman, J.C. Latham, another true freshman, Tommy Brackemeyer, all those guys trying to position themselves to win that right tackle position.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting, and a lot of people ask that question, who's going to win that spot? Damian George did a really good job last year when he had an opportunity to play. I mean, obviously he's got a little bit of experience. J.C. Latham, the 5-star true freshman, is a guy that's got a world of potential, Gary. I think he may that may be the guy to watch, J.C. Latham. Kendall Randolph is kind of alternated between tight end and offensive tackle. And you mentioned Tommy Brackemeyer. I think he's a guy that eventually probably be a left tackle, but certainly he's a 5-star as well. He'll get a look perhaps at right tackle too.
All right, Josh Jobe is a returning player, an all-star candidate at cornerback, but that opposite cornerback, you got the veteran, Jalen Armour-Davis, but you also got a couple of young players, Marcus Banks and the true freshman Kool-Aid McKinstry, all competing there.
I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is certainly a guy that is going to compete really hard as a true freshman, maybe one of the true freshmen that has a chance to push for a starting position. I thought he looked good in the spring. Jalen Armour-Davis, though, I mean, what a comeback story he is, Gary, after the injury early in his career.
He a lot of rumors that he would transfer.
That's right. It looked like for a while he might jump in the portal, but he stuck around. Now he's got a great opportunity to win this corner job. And then you mentioned Marcus Banks, who could, obviously could probably play both sides. And I thought he was having a great spring based on everything we were hearing, and he didn't participate in the A-Day game. One of many that didn't get to participate participate. But I think Marcus Banks is a really talented guy as well.
And wide receiver, another position where there's some competition there. But in addition to position battles on offense, we're going to be looking at a new look offense to some degree. Steve Sarkisian, now the head coach at Texas. Bill O'Brien comes in from the NFL. Both those guys very accomplished. And Nick Saban always likes to say it's the Alabama offense. We expect the coordinator to adjust to what we do. Still, there'll be some tweaks. What do you expect to see from Bill O'Brien on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of it's going to depend, Gary, on what they feel like their talent is. For example, we haven't really mentioned the tight ends. I know that Bill O'Brien certainly is known for utilizing tight ends. He did it, at Penn State. He did it, of course, in the NFL. You talk about Cameron Latu. He could be the surprise name on this team. We start seeing him emerge in spring. Jaleel Billingsley is a fantastic talent as well. So those two guys will probably get utilized quite a bit.
All right, Rod. Earlier this week, several Alabama coaches had their contracts extended and got raises as well, including, of course, the head football coach, Nick Saban. Through 2028, it's now official, approved by the Board of Trustees Compensation Committee. He gets a big pay raise and a big extension. Drew Swoboda, the new assistant coach for special teams and tight ends, $450,000 annually. And Swoboda was hired and replaced in March to replace Jay Graham, who resigned suddenly to focus on some mental health issues. Other coaches who were extended include Patrick Murphy, Brad Bohannon, Dana Duckworth, Jay Sewell, Christy Curry, Antoine Petway, George Husak, Jenny Mines, tennis coach, Mick Potter, Glenn Putre, and Dan Waters. But let's talk about Coach Saban. Listen, he's going to turn 70 on Halloween. He would be, I think, 76, going on 77 when his contract is up. But we've discussed this many times. Now he gets this extension. By the end of the contract, he'll be making over $11 million a year. I don't see any thought process going on from him that leads me to believe he won't finish out his contract.
Well, I think, Gary, he's talked about it. He said he couldn't imagine himself not being part of a team. Listen, I think he's got a lot of youth and energy in spite of maybe the number on his age. But, yeah, I mean, listen, he's doing a tremendous job recruiting. He's done a great job, continues to do a great job when he has staff changes, the things that he does, the adjustments that he makes, whether it's to offense, defense, adding offensive coordinators, defense coordinators. But what about the strength and conditioning program, the changes he made there? He put Alabama, I think, at the forefront nationally of where they are with David Ballou and Dr. Matt Ray. So, yeah, I don't see him slowing down a bit.
And we know he does it for the love of the game. He said, I worked just as hard when I was making $6,000 a year as a graduate assistant as I do now. But he is making a lot of money, too.
Yeah, and a lot of people say, hey, he's still underpaid. In spite of what he's making, underpaid.
Yeah, and he's still having a good time. All right, it's now time for Coach Talk. Alabama basketball had a great draft night last Thursday. Forward Joshua Primo, swingman out of Toronto, true freshman this past season, only 18 years old, was selected by the San Antonio Spurs with the 12th overall pick, a lottery pick. 18 years old, youngest player in the draft. And senior forward Herb Jones goes to the New Orleans Pelicans in the second round, number 35 overall. Alabama head coach Nate Oates is happy for his former players and just as happy for what this all can mean for Alabama basketball going forward.
Kids that we're recruiting want to get drafted, want to play in the NBA, and now you're showing that you can put kids in the NBA. And, obviously it's their work, but you put them in a system that allows them to show their talent. And, we're definitely using it for recruiting. I know Petway said some kids on the phone. We've been texting some kids, so they want to be the next one. So hopefully in next year's draft we get another lottery pick or get some more first-round picks and then just keep this thing going.
And John Petty Jr., not drafted, but he did sign and will play with the Detroit Summer League team. He hopes to earn a two-way contract with the Pistons. And listen, he had a knee injury, and then he had a couple of deaths in his family, including his grandmother. He really couldn't prepare the way that he wanted. But John Petty's got NBA talent. Don't be surprised, Rodney, if he has an opportunity at some point to play in the league, too.
Well, we've seen him, Gary. When he gets hot, he can shoot the three. What about the LSU game?
Oh, lit them up. And, of course, for Joshua Primo, you're talking about being a lottery pick. And then in Herbert Jones' case, I just can't imagine any team not being better with Herbert Jones on the roster. He plays defense. He's a great team guy. There you see his reaction to being drafted. And I tell you, the Pelicans are trying to change the culture there. I just think Herbert Jones is one of those guys, even if he doesn't put up great stats, I think your organization, your team gets better the minute Herb Jones joins you.
Well, I have to agree, Gary. I think he rubs off on people around him, his effort, The things that he'll do all the dirty work, really aggressive defensively. I just think it's his mindset, kind of what he brings as a player. I think it'll rub off in a positive way among those around him.
So for Alabama basketball, back-to-back years with lottery picks. Remember Kyra Lewis Jr. last year went 13th overall to the Pelicans. Primo this year. Also, Alabama one of only 3 schools to have 2 players taken in the first 35 picks this year. So not only did Nate Oates turn it around on the court for Alabama, turn it around in terms of the NBA, and we know that's how you do it. You get great players. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, former Alabama wide receiver Devontae Smith will miss a significant portion of the Eagles training camp. We'll tell you why when we come back. Plus, Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide added yet another recruit to the signing class for 2022. We'll talk about the latest commit for the Alabama Crimson Tide coming up. And also, we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, the phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Go ahead and call now so you can get through. You can email us at the address on your screen, WVUA23.com, TITV at WVUA23.com, or tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with a show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Welcome back to TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. You see our tumblers right there that we get to enjoy a beverage out of, and Don Staley and his crew do a great job here for tourism and sports in Tuscaloosa and West Alabama. Alongside Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Well, Alabama football stays hot on the recruiting trail. This past weekend, offensive tackle Dane Shore, now he's at Denmark High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. He's kicked around a little bit at different high schools. Didn't play last year because of an injury, so a little bit of a under-the-radar guy, but the bottom line is this. He came to camp at Alabama. The coaching staff, especially offensive line coach Doug Marrone, absolutely fell in love with this guy. And he grew up pulling for Auburn, said he always envisioned himself playing for the Auburn Tigers, but after he got to Alabama and got the offer, he said, man, I got to roll with the Tide. Yeah, you look at him, Gary, like you mentioned, was out last year with a shoulder injury, was at IMG Academy at one time, a guy that I think as this season goes along, you're going to see a lot of players, the rankings change in terms of players and where they stand. I think Dane Shore is going to have a great opportunity. You'll see him move up, I think, considerably. 6'6", 310. He is the 14th commit now in the class of 2022, and Alabama, we're not sure where the numbers stand for this coming year, but spots are starting to fill up fast now. Yeah, they are. And look, like I said last week, Gary, they're in on a lot of elite players around the country. They're still on a couple of other really top-notch offensive linemen, even though they have 2, Shore and Tyler Booker, a 5-star player who's already committed. Again, I think you look at every position, wide receiver, defensive linemen, linebackers, secondary players. They're still on several 5-star players. And right now, the way I see it with their commitments, Gary, they've got about 5 guys rated one service or another as a 5-star player. Potentially another 1 or 2 of the guys that are committed could be 5-star players. And I mentioned the high number of 5-star players that they're still recruiting. So they could land several of these top-notch players. You saw that video of Dane Shore, 6'6", 310. He's got those long arms. That's something that really offensive line coaches love in an offensive tackle prospect. To the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles, this is disappointing. We'll be without rookie wide receiver Devontae Smith for a good portion of training camp. The former Crimson Tide star and Heisman Trophy winner suffered an MCL sprain. Could miss up to possibly 3 weeks. Now, listen, he's good. He'll come back. But this is critical time, Rodney, for him. Getting his timing down as a rookie, getting timing with Jaylen Hurts. Even though he's going to come back and play, this is valuable time that he's going to miss. Yeah, it really is, Gary. You mentioned this is a key opportunity for him, and like you said, to kind of get in rhythm with Jaylen Hurts and this offense that they have now under the new coach, Nick Sirianni. That's a different kind of offense, and certainly they're making adjustments. But the good news is, like you said, that it's only minor. And Julio Jones, now he's in a totally different situation. He's going in his 11th year in the league, but he's with a brand new team, the Tennessee Titans. Unfortunately, he left practice yesterday after he came down gingerly on his leg. Reports that he was not on the practice field earlier today as well. But Mike Vrabel said he expects Julio to be fine. But Julio Jones, he knows how to take care of his body. He's one of the best conditioned athletes in the National Football League, so the expectation is that he'll be back and he'll be ready to go too. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV, a former Alabama athlete is making Olympic history for the United States in Tokyo. Stick around and we'll tell you who it is. And up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. Let us hear from you, Tider Insider Nation. We'll be right back with more after this. Well, Sarah Robles became the first U.S. woman to win 2 Olympic medals in weightlifting. Earlier this week, Robles, who competed for Alabama track and field in 2007, won a bronze medal in women's weightlifting. She also won a bronze medal 4 years ago in the Rio de Janeiro Olympic Games. Maybe even more impressive than 2 bronze medals, Robles is competing in her 3rd Olympic Games. She competed for Team USA in the London Games back in 2012 as well. Congratulations to her. And welcome back into the Tighter Insider program with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. Time to jump out on the phones, and we got our pal Rick from over at Regent Park. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Hey, fellas, appreciate y'all taking my call. Bluff Park is our area. Regent Forest is our neighborhood.
Okay.
So give them props to my homeboys.
Okay.
I'd like to ask you about the defensive lineman from the Pacific Northwest, and also how is the NIL thing going to affect team chemistry between the haves and have-nots? Appreciate you taking my call, fellas.
Okay. Defensive lineman in the Pacific Northwest. He's talking about the kid that's going to Ohio State?
I assume he was referring to JT Tuimoloau, who, of course, committed about a month ago to Ohio State.
Yeah, so he's out of play for Alabama. As far as NIL, it's a great question, Rick. It's something we've discussed here on the program. I'm discussing it on my radio show. People discuss it all over the country. We don't know. You know, we're all going to find out together. I'll say this, as I said about the COVID pandemic last year. Nick Saban will handle NIL as well or better than any coach in the country. I do believe that.
Listen, I couldn't have said it any better, Gary. I think that's certainly the one advantage that I think Alabama has is the way Nick Saban manages every aspect of the program, and I think like the pandemic last year certainly was managed better than any program in the country, at least as well as, and I think this NIL will be the same. I think Alabama's already a step ahead. I think there are some schools, as you kind of surf the internet and investigate what they're doing in recruiting, Gary, some of these programs, some of these coaches are behind the curve.
All right, and phone lines are open right now, 205-348-WVUA, 348-9882 if you want to call us. Let's take an email, Rod. This comes to us from Truett in Myrtle Beach, and it's on Jaylen Moody, which makes sense. He's from that area. What will Jaylen Moody's role be this season? Of course, he's talking about the inside linebacker from Conway, South Carolina, who we thought would probably be a starter, but then Henry To'oTo'o comes in, and we think To'oTo'o will win that starting job next to Christian Harris. But I get the feeling that in addition to special teams, Jaylen Moody's going to play a lot on this defense too.
It'll be very interesting. I thought he played really well. You remember when Christian Harris went down early in that Arkansas game, Jaylen Moody came in, made plays all over the field, and he's certainly a top-notch player. He played a lot in the playoffs, certainly played some against Notre Dame. And to have those 3 guys, Christian Harris, Henry To'oTo'o, and Jaylen Moody, that's a pretty strong inside linebacker.
Absolutely. I still remember how well Moody played last year against Arkansas.
Yeah, played
Christian
really
Harris
well.
went out. He came in, he was a missile, and he was going after people. All right, phone lines are open right now, 205-348-9882. We'd love to hear from you. We'll take more phone calls and get to more emails. Give us a ring right now. Phone lines are open, 205-348-9882. We'll be back with more Tighter Insider Television from Tuscaloosa, inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. You stay with us. Well, former Alabama golfer Emma Talley finished tied at the end of regulation at the ISPS Henna World Invitational, but she came up just short in the playoffs. So she finished second. It's her best ever finish on the LPGA Tour and her 7th career top 10, which is tied for the most ever by a former Alabama women's golfer. So close to winning, though, but still an outstanding performance by Emma Talley. All right, welcome back into the program. We're going to go back to the phone lines, and our pal Reg over there in Birmingham is with us. Hey, Reg.
Hello, fellas. Gary, you and Roddy can answer this for me. Alabama this year got probably one of the strongest opening schedules there is with the first 4 teams. But with the addition of these 2 new teams coming into the conference, will that probably eliminate a lot of these cupcakes are on the schedules, the Mercers and the Citadels and the Western Carolinas, in order to get these new teams scheduled to play? And also, Rodney, maybe you can tell me, does Georgia get more talent each year than Alabama? I hear a lot of these sports writers say they've got more talent than any team in the SEC. Thank you.
All right, Reg, let's start with the schedule. I hope they go to 9 games, Rod, when Oklahoma and Texas get in the league. I just don't see how you're going to have 16 teams and not play a 9-game schedule and spread it around. If that's the case, then, Reg, yeah, then that would only leave you 3 non-conference games instead of 4. So that's my hope. I hope they go to 9 SEC games. I know Nick Saban would be in favor of that. So how it's going to work, though, we'll just have to wait and see. As far as Georgia's recruiting talent, Rodney, is it better than Alabama? I don't know. I mean, Alabama's won more championships. I know this. Georgia's got a lot of good football players.
They do, but I'll say this, Reg, you know, Alabama's been the #1 recruiting class 9 out of the last 11 years.
It's hard to say they're better.
They're hard to say they're better. Georgia, in that, look at the first-round draft picks last year. Alabama had 6, Georgia had 1. I would say the key thing here is who develops their players better. And if you look at it, Alabama does it better than anyone in the country. And I think people are starting to realize, I think prospects are starting to realize that Alabama does it better than Georgia. You know, Georgia certainly recruits extremely well, but again, I think when you're a prospect, you look at who's recruiting and developing their players, and it's clearly Alabama.
All right, real quickly, we're going to get to an email from Tony in Oxford. Is Alabama picked to win the national championship? Well, Tony, they're certainly in discussion, as they are every year. I think some people haven't picked to win the national championship. Some people won't, Rodney, but they're one of the top teams to look out for.
And some people are picking against Alabama because they want to see someone different, but this is certainly a team that's capable of competing for another national championship.
Absolutely. All right, thanks for the phone calls and the emails, and we're going to come back and wrap up this edition of Tider Insider TV on a beautiful night here at the University of Alabama right after this. This past weekend, the University of Alabama held its summer commencement ceremony. 1,400 students walked across the stage, including 21 student athletes. That group was made up of a lot of really good athletes, including 1 NCAA champion, 8 All-Americans, and 5 Crimson Tide athletes who earned master's degrees. Good for them. Well, thank you for tuning in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Don't forget, if you missed any of tonight's show, you can catch a replay at 10:30 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I am Gary Harris. We're going to leave you with a Henry Ruggs softball highlight. You know what kind of athlete this guy is. Not just on the gridiron. He was an incredible basketball player, baseball player, and, yeah, he's got swag. He hit that bomb in a charity softball game out in Las Vegas. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy Henry Ruggs rounding the bases, and we'll see you again next week on Tider Insider TV.